My salty cousin fucked every date I brought to holidays, until I started dating her therapist. Thanksgiving has always been a big deal in my family. My name is Emily, I'm 32 years old, and I grew up in Michigan in one of those tight-knit families where everyone lives within a 20-mile radius. Showing up for every holiday isn't optional. It's basically mandatory unless you want to deal with the full fury of my Grandma Ruth, and trust me, no one wants that. Lena is my cousin on my mom's side. She's 2 years younger than me, and ever since we were kids, she's been treated like the family's golden child. And honestly, there's a reason for that. Lena is stunning. Not just pretty, but the kind of beautiful that almost feels unfair. Long blonde hair, bright green eyes, a flawless figure. She's the type of woman who could throw on a trash bag and still turn heads. And the worst part? She knows it. She's known it for a long time, probably since we were teenagers. The first time things crossed a line I was 23. I had just started dating a guy named Marcus. He was a graphic designer, quiet, thoughtful, really sweet. We'd been together for about 4 months, and I was already stressed about bringing him to Thanksgiving because my family can be overwhelming. But Marcus insisted. He said he wanted to meet everyone, said he was serious about me. That year, Thanksgiving was at my Aunt Carol's house. Lena arrived wearing this tiny red dress that was completely inappropriate for a family holiday. But of course no one said a word. No one ever does. My mom just shot me a look that said, "Here we go," and went back to mashing the potatoes like nothing was happening. After dinner, Marcus and I were sitting on the couch chatting with my uncle about football, just casual stuff. Out of nowhere, Lena walked over and physically wedged herself between us. She didn't ask. She just sat down, pushed her way into the middle, and pressed her leg right up against Marcus's. Then she started grilling him about his job, laughing a little too hard, touching his arm whenever she smiled, leaning forward so he had a clear view down her dress. I was sitting right there, inches away, and she acted like I didn't even exist. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but at the same time he was still a guy and Lena was being Lena. Later that night, I walked into the kitchen and found them talking alone. She had her hand resting on his chest, laughing at something he said. When they noticed me, Lena flashed that innocent smile and said, "I was just telling Marcus how lucky he is to have you." Marcus and I broke up 3 weeks later. He told me he needed space, said he wasn't ready for anything serious. 2 months after that, I saw him tagged in one of Lena's Instagram photos. They were at a bar downtown, and his arm was wrapped around her waist. That became the pattern. Every relationship I had after that, every single guy I brought home, Lena did the same thing. It didn't matter what holiday it was, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, the 4th of July. If I showed up with a date, she showed up dressed like she was headed to a nightclub. And by the end of the night, she always had his attention. There was Ryan, a teacher I dated when I was 25. Lena trapped him near the dessert table and spent half an hour talking about her charity work with underprivileged kids. They exchanged numbers so they could coordinate volunteering. I found out later they'd been texting nonstop for weeks. Then there was Chris, an accountant. Lena asked him to help her move furniture at her apartment. I wasn't invited. When I questioned him about it, he accused me of being jealous and controlling. There was James. There was Tyler. There was Christopher. Every single one of them. What hurt the most was that my family let it happen. My mom would quietly pull me aside and tell me Lena was young and didn't mean anything by it. My aunt suggested I shouldn't bring men around if I couldn't handle a little competition. My grandmother actually told me I should try being more feminine, maybe then I could keep a man interested. Eventually, I stopped bringing dates to family events altogether. For years I showed up alone. I told everyone I was focused on my career and happy being single. That wasn't the truth, I was still dating. I just refused to give Lena any more opportunities to wreck my relationships. Then I turned 31 and I met Trevor. Trevor felt different. He was a doctor, smart, funny, kind, and genuinely good-looking. We'd been together for 8 months, and it was the healthiest, most stable relationship I'd ever had. He kept asking to meet my family, and I kept dodging the subject. But when Christmas rolled around, I ran out of excuses. Before we went, I sat Trevor down and told him everything. I explained Lena, the history, every detail. I warned him she'd probably try something and asked him to stay close to me, ignore her, and not fall for her behavior. Trevor laughed. Actually laughed. He said, "Emily, I'm a grown man. I'm not going to let your cousin seduce me at a Christmas party. I love you. Stop worrying." I wanted to believe him. I really did. On Christmas Eve, we drove to my parents' house, and I was so anxious I felt physically sick. Trevor kept holding my hand, telling me everything would be fine. Lena was already there when we arrived. She was wearing a tight white sweater dress that looked painted on, paired with high heels that made her legs seem impossibly long. Her hair was styled in perfect waves. She looked like a Victoria's Secret model who had wandered into the wrong house. The second she saw Trevor, her eyes lit up. "You must be Trevor," she said with a huge smile as she walked over. "I've heard so much about you. Emily is so lucky." Then she hugged him way too long. At first, Trevor handled it well. He stayed polite but distant, kept his arm around my waist, kissed my forehead and stayed close. I started to relax, thinking maybe this time would be different. But Lena was patient. She always was. All evening, she hovered around us, sliding into every conversation, laughing at Trevor's jokes, asking him question after question about his work. At one point, she spilled wine on her dress and asked Trevor to help her clean it up because he was a doctor, so obviously he must know how to remove stains. I watched him hesitate. I watched him look at me. Then I watched him follow her into the kitchen. They were gone for 15 minutes. When they came back, her dress looked fine and Trevor's face was flushed. He told me they were just talking, said she'd been asking medical questions about her mom's knee surgery. I wanted to scream. We left early. I told my family I had a headache. Trevor drove us home without saying much while I cried quietly in the passenger seat. He kept insisting nothing happened. He swore he loved me, said Lena was just being friendly, and told me I was blowing everything out of proportion. But I could see it in his eyes. It was the same look I'd seen before, the curiosity, the spark of interest. That look never lies. We broke up in February. He said he needed to concentrate on his residency and didn't have room for a serious relationship. In March, I ran into him at a restaurant with a blonde woman. It wasn't Lena, but honestly it didn't matter. The damage was already done. That was it for me. I quit dating altogether. I stopped showing up to family gatherings. When my mom asked why I was never around, I told her I was buried in work and would visit when I could. She sounded disappointed, but I didn't care anymore. I was exhausted, tired of being embarrassed, tired of losing, tired of watching Lena walk away untouched every time. Then something unexpected happened. I started volunteering at a literacy program at the local library. One of their projects involved writing letters to inmates who were trying to improve their reading and writing skills. I signed up mostly because I needed something to fill my time, and helping someone learn to read felt like a good enough reason. They paired me with an inmate named Ethan. He was 34 and nearing the end of a 7-year sentence for armed robbery, with about 2 years left to serve at the time. His first letter was brief, just a few lines thanking me for volunteering and saying he hoped to become a better writer before his release. I wrote back and told him about my job as a project manager at a tech company, my love for hiking, the unpredictable Michigan weather. Nothing personal, just safe, everyday topics. His response came back longer. He wrote about growing up in Detroit, about making bad decisions when he was young, and about how prison had forced him to really think about the kind of man he wanted to become. His writing wasn't polished, but it was honest. There was something raw and unfiltered about it that I wasn't used to, and I found myself drawn to it. First we wrote once a week. Then it became twice a week. Before I knew it, we were writing almost every day. Ethan told me about the books he was reading, the anger management classes he was taking, and his plans for life after release. He wanted to work construction and maybe enroll in community college down the line. His aunt in Grand Rapids had offered him a place to stay while he got back on his feet. I told him about my family, about Lena, about how invisible and inadequate I felt most of my life, and how angry I'd become. Ethan didn't minimize it. He didn't tell me to toughen up or be more confident. He simply said, "Your cousin sounds like someone who only feels good when she's tearing other people down. That's not about you. That's about her." The way he said it, simple, direct, hit me hard. For the first time, it actually made sense. We wrote to each other for 8 months. His letters became the highlight of my week. He was funny, thoughtful, and emotionally open in a way the men I dated never were. Maybe it was because he had nothing to lose. Or maybe that was just who he was underneath everything else. Then one day, he wrote to tell me he'd be released in 2 months. He asked if I'd consider meeting him in person, just coffee, no pressure. He said he'd understand if I wasn't comfortable, that he knew it was complicated. I said yes. I'm still not sure why. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I was curious. Or maybe I just wanted something in my life that felt like it belonged to me. Something Lena couldn't touch. Ethan was released in October. We met at a coffee shop in Grand Rapids. I was nervous, obviously. This was someone I'd shared months of letters with, but had only seen in a grainy photo from his intake paperwork. When he walked in, I knew immediately it was him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and a slightly nervous smile. He wasn't polished like the men I usually dated, but he was real. And somehow that made him more attractive. We talked for 3 hours. It felt easy, natural, nothing like I'd imagined. He told me about adjusting to life outside, his drywall job, staying with his aunt. I told him about my apartment, my job, and my complicated family. When he asked if he could see me again, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. We started dating officially, though the label felt strange at first. We went to movies, grabbed dinner, took long walks along the river. Ethan was unlike anyone I'd ever been with. He listened. He didn't play games or dance around his feelings. He said exactly what he meant. Somehow, he understood me in a way that felt almost unsettling. He could sense when I was anxious before I said a word. He knew when I needed space and when I needed to be held. It felt like being truly seen for the first time in my life. In November, my mom called and asked if I was coming to Thanksgiving. I'd been dodging her calls, but this time I answered. She said the family missed me, that Grandma Ruth had been asking about me, that it had been nearly a year since I'd shown up for a holiday. I told her I'd think about it. That night, Ethan and I were lying in bed when I brought it up. He asked why I seemed so unsure, and I told him again about Lena, about the pattern, about how I couldn't stand watching it happen one more time. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Take me." I laughed and told him he didn't want to meet my family. He said he was serious, told me to bring him to Thanksgiving, said he wanted to meet this cousin of mine. I warned him. I told him Lena would go after him hard, flirting, touching, trying to get him alone. I told him she'd wrecked every relationship I'd ever brought around her. I told him she was beautiful, manipulative, and ruthless. Ethan just shrugged. "I've spent 7 years in prison," he said. "I think I can handle your cousin." I thought about it, then thought, why not? Worst case, Lena wins again, I lose another relationship, and I finally cut ties with my family for good. I was already halfway there. So I said yes. Thanksgiving morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed calm. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, nothing flashy. His hair was neat, his face clean-shaven. He looked good, normal, like a regular guy you'd bring home to meet your parents. On the drive to my parents' house, I gave him one last warning. Lena's going to come on strong, I said. She'll flirt, she'll touch you, she'll try to get you alone. Please just stay with me. Don't fall for it. Ethan squeezed my hand and looked straight at me. Emily, I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. I promise. When we walked inside, the house was packed. My mom hugged me like I'd been gone for a decade, not a year. My dad shook Ethan's hand and immediately asked what he did for work. Ethan answered simply, construction, and that was all it took. My dad launched into a long story about building a deck the previous summer. Then Lena came in from the kitchen. She was wearing a tight black dress with a deep neckline and heels that made absolutely no sense for a family holiday. Her hair was flawless, her makeup perfect. She looked ready for a cocktail party, not Thanksgiving dinner. The moment she saw Ethan, I could practically see the calculation happening behind her eyes. She walked over with that familiar, predatory smile. You must be Ethan, she said, holding out her hand. I'm Lena, Emily's cousin. Ethan shook her hand politely. Nice to meet you. Lena held onto his hand just a second longer than necessary. I've heard absolutely nothing about you, she said sweetly. Emily is so private. Then she looked at me with that fake innocent expression. How long have you two been together? A couple of months, I answered. That's adorable, Lena said. So how did you meet? I hesitated, unsure how to explain it, but Ethan answered before I could. Through a pen pal program. Her eyes lit up. Oh, like one of those online things? That's so cute. Something like that, Ethan replied calmly, completely unbothered. Lena immediately launched into her usual routine. She asked him about his job, where he grew up, what he liked to do for fun. She laughed and touched his arm. She leaned in close when he spoke. Every move was calculated, every gesture familiar. But Ethan didn't play along. He was polite but distant. He kept his answers short, then turned back to me or someone else. His hand stayed on my lower back the entire time. When Lena suggested he help her carry extra chairs in from the garage, he smiled and said, I think your dad's got it covered, and didn't move an inch. I could see the frustration starting to creep in. This wasn't going the way it usually did. Normally by now the guy would be hooked, laughing too hard, searching for excuses to be alone with her, clearly flustered by the attention. Ethan wasn't flustered. He wasn't even interested. Dinner was more of the same. Lena sat across from us and spent the entire meal trying to pull Ethan into conversation. She asked about sports, movies, music. She told dramatic stories meant to make her sound exciting and worldly. She laughed loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Ethan stayed polite. He nodded, smiled occasionally, but mostly talked with my uncle about fishing and asked my grandma about her stuffing recipe. Under the table, he held my hand the whole time. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room. Lena cornered Ethan near the drink table. I watched from across the room, my heart racing. This was usually the moment everything fell apart. The private conversation, the exchanged numbers, the quiet beginning of the end. I saw Lena lean in close. I saw her place her hand on his chest. I saw her whisper something in his ear. Ethan stepped back. He said something I couldn't hear, then walked away from her and came straight over to me, sitting down beside me on the couch. Lena stayed frozen by the drink table, staring like she couldn't believe what had just happened. My mom leaned over and whispered, I like this one. I almost cried. We stayed another hour. Lena kept circling, kept trying, but Ethan never wavered. He stayed with me, talked easily with my family, and treated Lena like she was just another person in the room, not the center of attention she was used to being. When we finally left, I felt like I could breathe again for the first time in years. In the car, I asked him what Lena had said by the drink table. He hesitated, then said, She told me you were damaged and insecure. Said I could do better. He paused. Then she gave me her number. My stomach dropped. What did you say? I told her I wasn't interested, he said calmly, and that she should probably work on being a better person before trying to ruin anyone else's life. I started crying right there. Not the sad kind of crying, relief. Like something that had been clenched tight inside me for years finally let go. Ethan pulled the car over and held me while I sobbed in the passenger seat. He didn't tell me to calm down or ask a million questions. He just held me. When I finally caught my breath, I looked at him and asked, Why? Why didn't you fall for it? Every other guy has. She's beautiful, she's charming, and she knows exactly what to say. Ethan looked at me like I'd asked the most obvious question in the world. Emily, I spent 7 years in prison, he said. You learn real fast how to spot people who are full of garbage. Your cousin isn't confident or happy. She's miserable. You can see it in her eyes. Desperate people are boring. Then he added, And I'm in love with you. Why would I want someone like her when I have you? I kissed him right there on the side of the road. I kissed him like my life depended on it. That should have been the end of the story. Ethan proved he was different. Lena failed. For once I won. But life never wraps things up that neatly. A week later, my mom called sounding upset. She told me Lena had come over crying, claiming I'd brought an ex-convict to Thanksgiving without warning anyone. Lena said she'd looked Ethan up online, found his record, and felt unsafe and disrespected. I was furious. I told my mom Ethan had served his time and that he was a good man. I said Lena was only upset because she couldn't control him. My mom sighed. Emily, honey, I know Lena can be difficult, But bringing a felon to a family event without telling anyone isn't okay. Your father is very upset. Grandma Ruth is worried. I hung up on her. For 3 weeks I didn't speak to anyone in my family. My phone filled up with messages. My aunt accused me of being selfish. My uncle said I should have warned everyone about Ethan's past. My cousin Rachel, who I'd always liked, sent a long message about considering other people's feelings and safety. The only person who had my back was my younger brother. He texted, "Lena is such a drama queen. Ethan seems cool." Ethan felt awful. He told me he should have insisted we warn my family, said he should have known his past would become an issue. I told Ethan none of it was his fault. I said my family was just doing what they always did, looking for any excuse to turn Lena into the victim. Still, it ate at me. The idea that I'd finally found someone genuine, someone solid, and my own family couldn't even be happy for me. And worse, that Lena could lose for once and somehow still make everything about herself. When Christmas came around, I didn't go home. I spent it with Ethan at his aunt's place instead. She made ham and mashed potatoes and didn't pry into my life or throw passive-aggressive comments my way. It was calm, easy. Honestly, it was the best Christmas I'd ever had. In January, my cousin Rachel called. She said we needed to talk in person and that it was important. I almost refused, but something in her voice made me agree. We met at a coffee shop. Rachel looked tense. She ordered a latte and just held the cup in both hands without taking a sip. "There's something you need to know about Lena," she said. "And you're not going to like it." I waited. She took a breath and told me that last year, Lena had started seeing a therapist. Aunt Carol had pushed her into it after she began having panic attacks. The therapist diagnosed her with something. Rachel couldn't remember the exact term, but the basic issue was that Lena was deeply insecure and relied on constant attention from men to feel good about herself. "That's not an excuse," I said. "I know," Rachel said quickly. "I'm not saying it is. But here's the part that matters. The therapist told her she needed to apologize to you, to actually face what she's been doing all these years." My stomach twisted. "Lena refused," Rachel continued. "She said you were the problem, that you were jealous and bitter. She said she didn't owe you anything." I felt sick. "But then Thanksgiving happened," Rachel said, lowering her voice. "You showed up with Ethan and something snapped. Lena came to my apartment that night and completely fell apart. She was crying, saying she didn't understand why Ethan wasn't interested in her. She couldn't handle the fact that her usual tricks didn't work. She said it was the first time in her life she'd ever felt invisible." "Good," I said. "And I meant it." Rachel shook her head. "That's not all." She stared down at her coffee. "Lena's been stalking Ethan online. Like seriously stalking him." My blood ran cold. "What?" "She found his old Facebook from before prison. She dug up articles about his arrest. She even tracked down his ex-girlfriend and started messaging her, asking questions." I felt like the air had been knocked out of my chest. "She can't stand that she lost," Rachel said. "So now she's trying to dig up anything she can, trying to convince the family that Ethan's dangerous. She's the one who told your mom about his record. She printed articles and showed them to Grandma Ruth." I could barely breathe. "Why are you telling me this?" Rachel looked up at me, eyes full of tears. "Because Lena's planning something. She's been talking about going to the police and filing a complaint, saying Ethan made her feel threatened at Thanksgiving. She wants to get him in trouble, maybe even sent back to prison. I couldn't let that happen without warning you." The room felt like it was spinning. "She wouldn't," I said. "Even Lena wouldn't go that far." "Emily," Rachel said softly, "she's not thinking clearly. She's desperate. And desperate people do terrible things." I left the coffee shop in a daze and called Ethan immediately. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I figured something like this might happen. People don't like it when ex-cons try to live normal lives. There's always someone waiting to tear you down." "We have to stop her," I said. "There's nothing to stop," Ethan replied. "I didn't threaten her. I didn't do anything wrong. If she files a false report, it won't hold up." "But it'll still be on your record," I said. "It'll follow you." He sighed. "Yeah, probably." I never felt anger like that before. Real burning rage. Rage at Lena for being so selfish and so cruel that she tried to destroy someone's life just to feel powerful. For 2 days I tried to figure out what to do. I thought about calling Lena and confronting her. I considered warning my parents. I even looked into talking to a lawyer. Then Ethan said something that changed everything. "What if we let her do it?" I stared at him. "What? What if we let her file the false report?" he said. "Let her lie. Let her put it in writing. And then we prove she's lying." "How?" Ethan pulled out his phone and opened his voice memo app. I recorded our conversation at Thanksgiving. The one by the drink table when she gave me her number. I record a lot of conversations now. Prison habit. He hit play. Lena's voice came through perfectly clear. "Emily is damaged and insecure. You seem smart. You could do so much better. Here's my number. Call me if you want a real conversation." Then Ethan's voice. "I'm not interested. You should probably work on being a better person before you try to ruin anyone else's life." Lena laughed, sharp and bitter. "Wow, you're just like her. Judgmental and boring." The recording stopped. "This proves she was the one coming on to me," Ethan said. "If she claims I threatened her or made her uncomfortable, this completely contradicts that. It shows she was the aggressor." I stared at him. You recorded that just in case? I told you, he said. 7 years in prison teaches you how to protect yourself. So we waited. If Lena filed a false report, we'd use the recording. If she didn't, we'd move on and live our lives. 3 weeks passed. Nothing happened. I started thinking maybe Rachel had been wrong. Maybe Lena had finally backed off. Then my mom called. She told me Lena had been in a car accident. Nothing serious, just a fender bender, but she was shaken and in the hospital. My mom wanted me to come visit her. I said no. My mom got angry. She said I was being cruel. Said Lena was family, and that I needed to put aside whatever petty grudge I was holding. I hung up, but the guilt crept in anyway. Guilt has always been my family's favorite weapon. They trained me to feel bad for setting boundaries, to feel selfish for protecting myself. So I went to the hospital. I didn't go to the hospital because I wanted to see Lena. I went because I wanted to prove to myself more than anyone that I was the bigger person. Lena was in a private room, sitting up in bed with a small bandage on her forehead. She looked genuinely surprised when she saw me. Emily, she said softly, I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, I replied. But Mom said you wanted to see me. Lena stared down at her hands, twisting them together. I did. I need to tell you something. So I waited. I've been really messed up, she said. Her voice shook, barely above a whisper. Like really messed up. My therapist says I've been using attention from men to avoid dealing with trauma from when I was younger. And I know that doesn't excuse what I've done to you, or what I've done to your relationships. I stayed quiet. Tears started rolling down her face. I've been jealous of you for a long time, she admitted. You always had your life together. A good job. Your own place. You're smart, you're funny, and people actually like you. All I ever had was my looks. And I've been terrified of losing that, of becoming invisible. So I kept trying to prove I was better than you by taking the one thing you had that I didn't. My relationships, I said. She nodded. Yes. Her voice cracked. I know how twisted that is. I know how badly I hurt you. And I'm sorry. I really am. I stood there looking at her, the woman who had tormented me for years, who had ruined relationship after relationship, who had made me feel small and invisible and broken. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I just felt exhausted. I don't forgive you, I said honestly. I don't know if I ever will. But I appreciate you finally admitting what you did. Lena nodded, still crying. I turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at her. For what it's worth, I hope you get the help you need. I hope you figure out who you are beyond your looks. But I won't be part of that process. Don't contact me. Don't contact Ethan. Just leave us alone. I walked out into the hallway and ran straight into Rachel. She hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, she said. I asked her what had happened, why Lena suddenly changed her tune. Rachel looked uncomfortable. Her therapist called her this morning. The police had reached out because Lena scheduled an appointment to file a report against Ethan. The therapist talked her out of it, told her it would ruin both of their lives and that she needed to face what she was actually feeling instead of trying to destroy someone else. I felt dizzy. She was really going to do it. Yeah, Rachel said quietly. But she didn't. That has to count for something, right? I didn't answer. I left the hospital and called Ethan. I told him everything. He was silent for a moment, then said, So, it's over? I think so, I said. Good, he replied. Because I have something I want to ask you. My heart jumped. What? Move in with me. I laughed, caught off guard. What? Move in with me, he repeated. I know we haven't been together that long, but I spent 7 years alone in a cell. I don't want to waste any more time. I love you. I want to build a life with you. So move in with me? I asked. Yes, he said. I moved in with Ethan that March. We got a small apartment near his job, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We adopted a shelter dog, a mutt named Milo who'd been abandoned by his previous owners. We built a life together that was quiet, normal, and boring in the best possible way. I didn't talk to Lena. I skipped Easter and Mother's Day. I stayed in touch with Rachel and my brother, but everyone else in my family could wait. In June, my mom called and asked if I was coming to the 4th of July barbecue. I said no. She cried and accused me of tearing the family apart. I told her the family had been broken for a long time. I was just done pretending otherwise. Then something unexpected happened. Lena sent me a letter, an actual handwritten letter in the mail. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. The letter was long and raw. Lena wrote about her childhood, about being sexually abused by a family friend when she was 12, and how no one believed her when she told her parents. She wrote about learning early on that her looks were the only thing people valued, that her body became her only form of currency. She wrote about years of therapy and medication, about trying to understand why she felt so broken. She wrote about me, about watching me build a life while hers fell apart, and how that made her feel worthless. She admitted she convinced herself that stealing my happiness would somehow make her feel whole. She said she was now in intensive therapy, that she'd cut off toxic friends, that she was trying to build a life based on something other than male validation. She said she didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to understand. At the end of the letter, she included a printed photo. It was from one of the times she'd stolen a boyfriend from me, Chris, I think. They were smiling at a party. On the back she'd written, I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. The truth is I was the one who felt invisible. I showed the letter to Ethan. He read it carefully, then looked at me. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said honestly. You don't owe her anything, he said. Not forgiveness. Not understanding. Nothing. She hurt you over and over. You get to decide if she deserves another chance. Do you think she does? I asked. Ethan thought for a moment. I think people can change. I did. But change is hard and most people don't actually do the work. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. Either way, that's not your responsibility. He was right. I knew he was. I wrote Lena a short letter back. I told her I'd read her letter and that I was sorry for what she'd been through, but I still needed distance. I said maybe someday we could have some kind of relationship, but not now. She wrote back and said she understood. That was 1.5 years ago. Last month, Rachel called me with an update I never saw coming. She told me Lena was engaged to a woman named Lena. They'd met in a therapy group, had been together for about 1 year, and according to Rachel, Lena seemed different, calmer, happier, more real. Apparently, Lena wanted to invite me to the wedding but was too nervous to reach out herself. I told Rachel I'd think about it. That night I talked it over with Ethan. He told me the decision was completely mine and that he'd support me either way. I asked if he'd come with me if I decided to go. He smiled. Watching you face your family again after everything? I wouldn't miss that. The next day I called Lena. We ended up talking for 2 hours. She told me about Elena, about how therapy was helping her, about the work she was doing to be a different person. I told her about my life with Ethan. Our apartment, our dog, the routines we built together. It felt strange talking to her like a normal human being instead of someone I was bracing myself against. Before we hung up, she asked if I'd come to the wedding. She said she'd understand if I said no, but that it would mean a lot to her if I was there. I said yes. The wedding's in 2 months. I honestly don't know how I'll feel seeing my family again. Or watching Lena get married and claim she's changed. I don't know if people truly change, or if some just get better at hiding their demons. I guess I'll find out. Ethan says that's one of the biggest lessons you learn after prison. You take life one day at a time. You accept that people are messy, complicated, and sometimes awful. But every once in a while they surprise you. He says I surprised him. That he never imagined getting out of prison and meeting someone who loved him despite his past. That he never thought he'd get a second chance at a normal life. I tell him he surprised me too. That he was the first person who ever chose me over Lena. The first person who saw through her games and decided I was worth more. Right now we're sitting on our couch, Milo curled up between us, arguing about whether we should get a cat. Ethan says yes. I say we already have a dog. He says that's exactly why we need a cat, to balance things out. I laugh because this is my life now. Debating pets with a man who spent 7 years in prison, and somehow turned out to be the most stable, honest person I've ever known. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Lena. Thank you for saying yes to the wedding. It means everything to me. I text back. See you there. I don't know what will happen at that wedding. I don't know if Lena and I will ever have a real relationship. Or if my family will ever fully understand why I had to protect myself from them for so long. But for the first time in my life, I'm not worried about it. Because I have Ethan and our dog, and our tiny apartment, and this quiet, boring, beautiful life we've built together. And that's enough. Actually, it's more than enough. It's everything.